Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode of A Podcaster Says What? A while ago, I did a video called Don't Get Absurd Over Words, and it was about the fallacy of getting offended at everything or taking offense to many, many different things, and just pointing out that it is actually a weakness, that it makes you a liability, that it shows that you're easily manipulated, and it's really just not a good look. It also kind of sets you up for a pattern of shirking responsibility for your own actions and perpetually blaming other people for them and giving them power over you. And having nothing to do with recent events or anything surrounding recent events, I had the idea just hit me. How about I do a PSA, a public service announcement about hatred. And so that's what I'm doing. And it's a little bit off the cuff, so it's going to be a little rough. I do apologize for that, but I didn't want it to make it too rehearsed. And again, it is kind of, again, nothing in response to anything that's happened recently. But the bottom line is this: hatred is bad. Avoid hating anything or anyone. Now, the first thing that comes to your mind, or a lot of people's mind when they hear that, is don't hate anybody, automatically trying to find a way to justify it, trying to think, well, wait, there's an exception. There's a reason that I should be able to hate somebody or hate something. Oh, what's the exception? What's the rule? How can I justify it? And similar to taking offense, it's very peculiar to me how anxious people get when you try to say, hey, don't embrace this ugly, nasty, cancerous thing. I don't know why I went to that voice. They want to hold on to it as if you're taking something very precious from them. You say, hey, you don't need to get offended, but I want to get offended. How dare you tell me I can't be offended? I'm not saying you can't be. I'm simply saying it's not good for you to be offended. It's not healthy for you to get offended. But they hold on to it like it's something near and dear. And same thing with hatred. People, when you say that, the first thing is, no, well, here's why I should be offended, or here's a time where I should be able to be hateful or hate somebody. And it's this very bizarre thing, like you're trying to pry something very precious away. Hatred is not a precious thing, folks. It's not something you want to hold near and dear to yourself. So the instinct, the impulse to try to find a way or think about justifying hatred is very bizarre. And it's just something to think about. If that was the first thing you thought of when I said, don't hate anybody or anything, automatically, but what about this person? What about this? What about these things? And I'm going to go through several things that might have popped into your head and kind of explain why it's not great to hate. There we go. That's what I should call this. It's not great to hate. I might even do that. That may be the title of this video. And the first thing is, hate is never justified, because another way of looking at justification for hate or justification for anything is it healthy? Because if you're saying something is justified, if somebody is justified in something, you don't want to be justified in doing something that's detrimental to yourself. So to say you are justified in feeling a certain way towards someone or something is to say that it is healthy and right for you to feel that way. So for example, if you are in an abusive relationship, whether it's physical or emotional, is it justified for you to be angry about that? Yes, because it is healthy for you to be angry at a situation in which you are being abused. Because anger can be, it's very volatile. It can create a lot of problems, but on the good side of anger, it can prompt you to do something, take some action that you were either too timid or, I don't want to be, mean, or I don't want to be considered mean, or I don't want to, all that goes out the window and you go, no, I need to get out of this relationship. And again, it can easily translate into actions or words that you're going to have to, say you're sorry for later, but it can also compel you to do something that you need to do. And injustice, which I would say abuse is injustice, it's healthy. It is a healthy aversion to dislike or to oppose injustice, to get angry at injustice. So that would be just healthy and therefore justified. Is it justified to get angry at a coworker or somebody who works under you, if you're a manager, to get angry at a coworker for making an honest mistake? Is it justified? No, because it's not healthy. Getting angry at somebody, because anger it's not a net zero sum. If you get angry at somebody, you're going to say things and behave in a way towards them that is going to show your displeasure with them. Is it healthy to show displeasure to a good worker who just made an honest to goodness mistake? No, it's detrimental to the working relationship. It's going to decrease morale. It's going to have a huge impact, a big downside. And now if an employee has habits and behaviors that are conducive to creating problematic mistakes and habitual mistakes, then it is worth it to show your displeasure and to create a discipline plan punishment really isn't all that helpful, but a disciplinary action or disciplinary plan to correct those behaviors, because otherwise it will continue to move on. So there's still a downside to showing your anger or your displeasure with a mistake that comes from bad habits, but it is well worth it to you, your company, and ultimately to that employee's growth to, like, it's a cost to benefit. And it makes sense to have that conversation and to do those things to somebody who has a propensity for creating problems, where it doesn't make sense to do that towards an employee who really just screwed up. There's no way to correct it. There's no behavior they need to change. It literally was just, they made a split second judgment error, and you say, hey, in the future, this is the way it needs to be done. But to get angry about it is not justified, because it's not healthy. It doesn't actually help your business. So when we ask, is it ever justified to hate somebody? It is never justified, because it's never healthy. It never benefits you to hate somebody or hate something. And there are people, and usually it's tied to some kind of religious belief. It can be any kind of religion, but a lot of times it goes under like a Christian thing, where they say, well, we're told to, the biblically, I don't think there's actually I can't remember if there's actually a scripture that says hate the sin, love the sinner, or love the sinner, hate the sin. But the idea of to hate sin, we're supposed to hate wrongdoing, hate wickedness. That actually translates not to focused animus, which is kind of the definition I'm going to work with for hatred, but more for to abhor, to shun, to remove yourself, to turn away from those things. So I don't hate sin, I simply turn away from it. And if you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's what it says. Hate. Well, you got to remember, it's the same confusion that comes in when people talk about fearing God, where it says the fear of the Lord. And there are genuinely people who think that is to be interpreted as you are supposed to be terrified of God, to fear his wrath, to fear his punishment, to fear what he can do to you, what he wants to do to you, or what he has the capacity to do for you or to take away from you if you do not love him, if you do not seek him, if you don't obey him. That love is supposed to be based on a fear of retribution or punishment. And ask yourself this: if you had a friend come to you and say, I'm terrified, I'm in this loving relationship with my husband because I'm afraid that he's going to punish me or beat me or take something away from me if I don't love him. So I love him and I live with him and I smile around him and I thank him because I'm afraid that he is going to hurt me otherwise. Would you be like, okay, that's a healthy relationship. That's the way it's supposed to be. How much more so if this is a God of love, the embodiment of love itself in the universe, to imply that he wants a relationship based on a legitimate fear and terror of what he is capable of doing to you. It's asinine. It's ridiculous. And that's why the word fear, when you translate it into Hebrew or Greek, is not literally a terror of or a fear of retribution. It is awe. It is reverence. And it's the same thing with hatred. We're not told to hate something, to focus our animus on something. We are told to shun it. And again, if you want to say, well, I still believe it means to hate. What do you gain from that? Is my question to you. Is it not enough to shun it? Is it not enough to abhor it? Is it not enough to say, I want no part of that and to turn away from it? What more do you gain by actually focusing animus and anger towards it? There's I think maybe a misconception that you can't fight, you can't battle against something, you can't succeed or win over something if you don't hate it. But all you have to do is look at things like contact sports, football, boxing, MMA. Do those fighters hate each other? I mean, there may be some bad blood between them. There may be some grudges or something, but actual hatred for each other, I would say very rarely, if ever. It's really just about competition and trying to be better than the other person. But they are violent. They are violently hurting each other, but they're doing it without hatred. And in fact, hatred, we're going to talk about a little bit later, it's blind. And it pairs with some very detrimental things, but just by in its very nature, that is actually going to be a detriment to your ability to fight, whether it's physical or just in terms of mental processes or what have you. I'm not really showing a great deal of mental cognition right now, but that's okay. We're moving on. So it doesn't benefit. You don't add anything. You're not missing out on anything if you don't hate someone or something. So there's no perk to it. On the other hand, it is actually very detrimental. Hatred is cancerous. And I say that for two reasons. I'm not trying to compare it to cancer directly, but it is cancerous in two ways. First of all, it typically starts out localized. It's going to be one particular area. In this time, in which there is absolutely no impetus for me to be discussing something like this, you will discover that you'll hear people say things like, this person is so nice and they're so nice to this particular community and they do all these great things and they contribute all this money. I don't understand where this is coming from. I'm so disappointed. It's because you can have typically when hate is there, it starts off very small and it's only in a certain area. So unless that person is engaged with or has to confront or is confronted with that person or ideology or what have you, which in theory they're going to avoid at all costs while they're trying to put on a good face. And it's not necessarily a mask off. People are talking about this as a mask off moment. Oh, we're seeing all the hatred. No, it's simply that most of the time in most interactions, this particular thing that they hate or this person they hate is not particularly relevant. Now, for some people, it has been, and there are words for it where it's like everything that happens, every negative thing that happens, it can be traced back to one person or an ideology or a philosophy, which is an obsession, and that's not healthy either. But for most people, it's going to start off and be very small and hard to detect. I personally relatively recently, had to confront the fact that I had hatred in my heart, not towards a person, but towards an ideology, towards a way of looking at how people should behave and interact with each other. And it just so happened that I had a coworker or actually it was a manager who who personified that mentality, that ideology for a time, stood in front of me and in essentially asserting some kind of, as a manager, authority or decree into my life, into my personal life on how I need to behave or how I should conduct myself. He put himself, like I said, he aligned himself with that and personified it. And so I was looking at him with the amount of animus and loathing that I have for that ideology. It was being channeled towards him to the point that it scared him and kind of things went askew after that. I don't think it was justified necessarily, but I did have to come to the understanding when I was honest with myself that I wasn't just looking at him to show my displeasure. Because here's, again, as a manager, and he was being disingenuous in a lot of different ways. And he was exacerbating the situation by the lies and everything. So it was very hard when you're talking about somebody in authority and you're talking about in a professional environment. You're limited in the amount of things you can do. And like talking, I knew that trying to argue wasn't going to do anything. He was dead set on his opinion. And then it's like, well, but if I argue, even if like he's not going to change his mind, and if I do, it's not going to change the status quo. It's not going to change the situation. He's not going to change his mind. So all I'm doing now is creating a rift between us, which is not productive. But at the same time, this is not fair. This is not right. This is not just. And so I allowed myself to channel that anger into my facial expression. And so it became manipulative. Partially, it wasn't simply just I'm angry and you're seeing the anger on my face. I was intentionally essentially screaming from my face, I am pissed off right now. And I loathe every word that's coming out of your mouth. It called me to the mat with it. I'm going, okay, I have to understand I have developed a hatred for this, not for that person, but for this ideology that this person just so happened to embody. And that is not good. That does not help me. It escalated a situation that didn't need to be escalated. And again, I would say objectively, and the meetings afterward bore this out. It was not his reaction to that was not justified, but it still elevated to that point where it became unproductive and it became detrimental both to me and to the situation at large. So it did not help me. But it's a very small part, and you have to really, it takes a lot to get somebody in a situation or to bring that into convergence where the focus of my ire would be again, that focused animus would be on a particular individual in a way that would create a horrible situation. For me, just to pontificate or to talk about how much I dislike this ideology, whatever, isn't really going to trigger anything or cause any problems necessarily on its face, but to aim that at somebody, it certainly does. So again, it starts off very local, and it creates what I call an alignment with disalignment. So it's similar to what I've said many times about truth. When you tell a lie, the problem with lying is that it inherently erodes your integrity. So we start off facing true north, right? Our wheels are like this. We're aligned with truth. We tell a white lie, a very small lie. We think it's inconsequential. We're out of alignment with truth. Doesn't matter. There's no way to argue that point. If you are not telling the truth, you are out of alignment. You are no longer aligned with the truth. And if you look at that and go, okay, yeah, I'm out of alignment, but it's okay. I'm going to justify it. I'm going to say it's healthy for me to tell lies like this. You are now not only eroding your integrity, but you are now aligning yourself with being out of alignment. Your wheels are now like this, and you're going, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. This is okay. So now you are constantly having to make conscious adjustments to your life to continue to try to move towards truth, because your wheels are now permanently affixed out of alignment, and you are okay with that. You are aligned with this disalignment or misalignment, I guess. And so you are your tendency is always going to be to steer away from truth because you've set yourself up for that. And it's the same thing with hatred. Once you have decided that you are justified in hating someone or something, you are no longer facing truth. You're no longer facing healthy. Your wheels are now turned this way. You are now out of alignment with health and with a right way of being. And if you look at that and go, no, it's justified. I'm okay. It's healthy for me to feel hatred towards this person. Now your wheels are permanently askew and you are going to be constantly going towards the extreme and towards further away from where you want to be. And if you don't fix it, you just continue to go. I mean, there's an analogy. If you have a ship and if its course is supposed to be from here to here, all you have to do is shift that by a few degrees or fractions of a degree. And the further you go, the longer you go, the further away you get from where you want to be. So you can say, well, I was supposed to end up here. Somehow we ended up way over here. And it's all it is just because it's a small variance here, but it just gets bigger and bigger over time. And so that alignment with misalignment is going to take you further away unless you're constantly fighting it. You're always going against it. And so it doesn't make sense. Why would you align yourself with an unhealthy way of thinking, an unhealthy way of being? Why would you align yourself with lies and steering yourself away from the truth and believing that that is justified or that is healthy, and then having to just constantly course correct? So what we need to do is go, no, it's not okay. It is not justified for me to be angry. I can say this is a horrible thing. It's unjust. And I can say, I disagree with it and I will oppose it. I will fight against it, but I don't have to hate it. I don't have to allow myself to get into that situation, to get to that, have that mindset where I am just seething with anger and seething with rage and have this hyper-focused, as I said, animus towards this ideology or person. It doesn't benefit. And that's the problem with the why it's cancerous. It spreads very, very quickly. So it starts off localized. And then once you're out of alignment and you justify, you're like, it's okay for me to hate this person because he said these things that I don't like and did these things or allegedly did these things that I also don't agree with. If you allow that misalignment, what it's going to do is carry you over. And the next step of that is, okay, well, this person agrees. This person likes that person. They don't necessarily, this person that I hate, it's not that they believe in everything that person says, but they like them, they champion them, they overall approve of what they do. Therefore, that person is guilt by association. I can now hate this person because they align themselves more or less with this person. They're in favor of, or they root for this person. So therefore, they are also worthy of my hatred. And this person isn't necessarily saying they like this person, but they're not actively speaking out and condemning this person the way that I want them to. And so therefore they are part of the problem and they're worthy of my hatred. And it just spreads like a cancer. It is going to overcome your body because, and this is where it kind of breaks off from the real cancer analogy. With real cancer, it doesn't matter whether you accept it or not, it's going to spread. Whereas with hatred, if you locate it and say, okay, I see the hatred here. If you don't shut that down, if you don't say, okay, and whatever that means, I mean, for me, somebody who does, believe in God, I take it to God and say, God, I don't want this anger. I don't want this anger. I don't want this hatred. I don't want this animus. This is not healthy. It's not good for me. Please take it. Please cleanse my heart. Like fill it with love for that person. Doesn't mean that I can't fight against that person. Doesn't mean that in an MMA fight, I can't beat the snot out of that person with great fervor and great skill and great tenacity. It simply means that I don't hate them, that I'm not going to stand over them and be like, yeah, you take that and you like it. Like, you don't have to do that. I can beat somebody and be glad that I prevailed and not gloat and not feel like that this person got what they deserved and you belong on the ground and I hope you can't get back up. Like, you don't need to go there in order to win. So I don't need that to win. So I don't, and so for some people, it may be like a meditation that they do. Some people, maybe it's just a mental thing that they've got to do. They have to picture the person and instead of picturing them getting beat up or having some horrible violence inflicted upon them, they just think of them as maybe being, walking off into the sunset or something, or going to jail or whatever it is, where you just transform it from something that contains very aggressive animus towards that person, a resentment towards that person, and transform it into something else, knowing that you can still oppose them. You can still be against what they believe or what they think or what they put forward, and you can put forth your own beliefs, but do so without incurring or aligning with that hatred. So that's why I say it's cancerous, because it does start off localized. And so, and I said this earlier, it's not necessarily a mask off moment. It's that there was ugliness. Because hatred is ugly, folks. Don't get me. I mean, that is, again, Certainly not in any way inspired by anything, but I saw so much just ugliness. Like, you want to talk about humanity looking ugly. You know, some people, it's like, oh, what are we doing to the planet? Or look what they do to the animals. I look at it like how humans view other human beings. Like, that's when I see the worst of humanity, is when other human beings can treat each other and look at each other as lesser than. And that is one of the big issues, one of the big downsides to hatred, is it automatically pairs with pride and self-righteousness, or pride or self-righteousness, I guess, either way. Because in order to hate something with that much animus, or to have that much animus towards something, you have to be superior, see yourself as superior to that person or that ideology. Well, let's just say person, just to make it a little bit easier, so we're not having to split hairs the whole time. Over that person, whether it's something superficial like race, or whether it's something more profound like their actions, their words, their core values, how they voted, or what have you. You have to feel superior to them in order to hate them. That's what makes them, that's what justifies or makes you feel like you have a right to hate them, that it is okay, or that it is justified, or it is healthy for you to hate them, because they are lesser human beings than you. They are less, they do not embody the values and the things that you believe in, which which in theory it's what makes you human. And so therefore they are lesser than. And so you cannot have hatred without self-righteousness or without pride, depending. I mean, they're kind of on the same coin, but not really. There's different versions of them. One is just regarding self and comparing yourself to other person. The other one is believing yourself to be a better person. Typically, again, you see that manifest with like a religious type connotation, but it is, I am holier than thou. But you can certainly have that attitude without thinking holy. You can just think, I'm a better person than that. But you can't genuinely hate somebody if you think that you're not that far removed, which is why it's such a big deal that, again, I'm not trying to insert religion here, but if you just think about it as a philosophy, all have sinned and fallen short. You can't be self-righteous if you genuinely believe if you're guilty of one offense against the law, you're guilty of everything against the law. If you've broken the law, you've broken it all. And that's not a condemnation. That's not to make you feel like a piece of crap. That's essentially saying, though, you have no right to ever feel superior towards another human being, because as far as God is concerned, everybody's done screwed up. And if you screwed up at all, you screwed up. You just screwed up. That's just the way it is. Now, the consequences for those screw ups on this planet are much different, how they manifest. But in terms of your heart, in terms of where you're at in your life, it's no different. You're no better than. And it's designed, that philosophy is there to contradict this idea that I am better than you somehow. And therefore I have cause, or I have justification to hate you, because you are lesser than you. Your actions, your words, everything makes you worthy of my hatred and scorn. And hatred is blind. Pride is blind. A lot of the time, people don't understand with this event that happened recently. And again, this is the 18th of July. So what was that? The 15th, I think it was now. I don't know. The events that happened, and most of you are going to know what this is. Obviously, in 20 years, who knows if people are going to know. But I don't know if this video will be up for 20 years, so it doesn't matter. But I'm purposely trying to avoid it, not because it was inspired, or this was what brought this to my mind, but it is not geared towards anybody or in particular. So I'm trying to keep the focus off of it, while admitting or understanding that yes, there is an impetus for this. But you see a complete lack of awareness of consequence of that. When you hate someone so much that you are fixated on their demise, it blinds you to what that actually means for people beyond the scope of just that one individual. And even something very basic. One of the main reasons why, thou shalt not kill is a thing, and however you want to phrase it, it's pretty much most civilized societies will say it's not okay to kill people. Like, that's what it equates to. It's because if you strip everything away and say, okay, well, let's just start from square one. Why is that a bad thing? Because it causes distrust, it causes hurt, it causes anguish. Hurt people hurt. It's very hard to get over that. There is an immediate desire for some kind of justice, for some kind of retribution. It makes society feel less secure. It makes society, it puts fear into people. And even though, we're not been given a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind, it doesn't mean that things can't transpire that makes you, fear is a natural thing. And I'm not saying, as a caveat, I'm not saying that it is not natural to feel hatred towards somebody, for hatred to grow or to sprout up. I'm just saying it's important once you realize that. So for a lot of these people who have had a specific reaction towards the events that happened recently, a celebration, a gloating or a mourning, a genuine mourning that a life was not taken. For those people, there is an opportunity there to say, oh crap, I did not know. I didn't realize how deep this went. I didn't realize how ugly this was inside of me. I didn't realize that I had let this kind of fester and I had let this grow, and that that it has become cancerous to me. And so it's like, it's a grace where it manifests in this way, where there's an initial reaction to something and you go, yeah. And you go, wait a minute. Like there was in Undercover Brother, there was a place where Dave Chappelle's character, Conspiracy Brother, Neil Patrick Harris is a affirmative action hire for the Brotherhood. And something happens and he's like, always trying to shut the white man down. And David Chappelle's character, Conspiracy Brother, says, that's right. Oh, that ain't right. And it's like, it's that moment where it's manifested for your benefit to go, hey, look at yourself. Look at this. It's kind of like what my experience was when, I really thought about it, and I kept going because it kept bothering me. And I was like, I'm forgiving all the people involved. There's forgiveness there. I don't hold anything against them. It kind of needed to happen. I was going to move anyway, yada, yada. But it kept coming back to my mind. I'm like, what's going on? And it was because I was ignoring the fact that there was a manifestation of hatred, and I was trying to ignore it and look past it, be like, nope, I can see everything they did wrong and I'm okay, letting that go. But I was not looking at the manifestation, the evidence of hatred that had taken hold of my heart. And so for these people, it's a chance for them to go, oh, it's okay. I don't have to like this person. I don't have to agree with what they say or do. But for me to hate that much where this is my reaction, that's not okay. We should never, as I said, we should never hate. There's never a time, there's never a person that we should ever feel hatred for, where we celebrate their demise. Monsters in history, and I'm going to say his name. It's so tired, I know, but the unfortunate thing is there's so much fracturing and so much dissension that it's very hard to find a person that a lot of people, most people can agree was, at least for the most part, if not wicked or evil incarnate, was definitely just not a great person. And of course, I'm talking about Hitler. But even a monster like that, even somebody who does horrible things like that, we should not be gloating and in jubilation over his demise. We can be relieved, which is what a lot of people who, if they have somebody who's murdered, that killed somebody in their family, and then there's that particular state has capital punishment, and so they were there for the execution. They typically are not like, yeah, your justice has been served. Yeah, this is so great. Screw it. I'd love to see the frothing and the pain in his eyes. A lot of the time you just hear I was relieved. It felt like I finally was able to get closure. And whether you agree, this is not an essay into capital punishment, right or wrong, whatever, but the idea being that even when someone has an affront done to them and there is somebody in their family, somebody that is actually taken away, not, oh, I heard that this person said something about this, or I heard that he had this policy or whatever, not hearsay, not, well, this was interpreted by the media. Literally, this person, we know for a fact, took my son's life. When that person faced execution, when it was over, I was just relieved. I wasn't happy. I wasn't like, yeah, die. I was just relieved that I was able to get closure for this, and that I know that person can't harm me or anyone else ever again. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me feel like, oh yeah, this is what my son would have wanted, or that that he can rest easy now necessarily. This just means it's never going to happen again. And that this person who decided that they did not need that part of their humanity, that they were okay taking another human life, they're no longer able to do that to anybody else. They're no longer here with us. And again, that's not to say that capital punishment is right or wrong, but that is the reaction of somebody who actually had, if we were to talk about justification, if you wanted to try to justify it and hold it close to yourself, you can say, I would say somebody who, without a shadow of a doubt, eliminated one of your, family members, that would be a way. And let me make a distinction here, folks. I'm not saying that it's not understandable to have animus, or to hate somebody, for hatred to manifest in somebody. I'm not saying it's not understandable if that person is wrong for having that there. I think it can be a very natural outspring of a bitterness or resentment that, from a situation or a circumstance. I'm just saying that the embellishing of it, the aligning yourself with it, The embracing of it is detrimental, is harmful, and therefore, I would say, is wrong. That's one of those sticky points where people get really hung up on, oh, you don't tell me what's right and wrong or what's good. I'm not saying it's wrong because I don't agree with it. I'm saying it's detrimental to you, so it's the wrong thing to do. It's like touching a burner of a stove. It's dangerous. It's harmful to you to do that. You will get burns on your fingers. You may lose your hand. I mean, there's a whole bunch of horrible things that can happen. So therefore, it's wrong to touch a stove. It doesn't mean you're a bad person for doing it. It just means, in a way of encapsulating the experience, it's a bad experience, therefore wrong. You want to avoid it because it inherently carries these nasty consequences. Same thing with hatred. Embracing hatred is like embracing a burner. It's like embracing something, cancerous. It's like, oh yes, I love this thing that is consuming my very soul and my very being. But as I said, to ever say that hatred is justified is to say that it's healthy or a right way to live your life. And I don't agree with that. But even in those circumstances like that, all the person says is, where somebody is taken from them and they are then, it's kind of an eye for eye type punishment system. They say it was a relief. You watch, I was watching Band of Brothers the other day. Well, it was a long time ago, not the other day. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, watching Band of Brothers, they were doing an interview with one of the guys named Shifty. And he was just kind of a good old boy. He was a sniper. He took a lot of long shots, as I recall. But anyway, he fought in World War II and he did kill people. But he said in one of the interviews, he said, in another situation, we might have been friends. The guy over there, we might have gone fishing. We might have gone hunting together. We might have got along just great. But, he was there. He had a job to do and I had a job to do. And that's just the way it needed to happen. That's just the way it was. And so acknowledging that even then, this person who was fighting for his life against these people, and arguably some of them, some of them were embodying or channeling what we would consider to be evil. Again, this ideology that was infused or drove a lot of what was done by Germany. Didn't mean that everybody, or even a vast majority of like foot soldiers and everything, necessarily agreed with that. A lot of them were there just, I'm fighting for my country. It's kind of like General Lee, from in the Civil War. He said, I go with Virginia. There was a lot of state loyalty back then, and it had nothing to do with states' rights, government rights, anything else. Lee was very specific, just said, I go where Virginia goes. So if they fought for the North, he would have fought for the North. And they actually sided with the South. He went with there. So a lot of times it can just be that kind of loyalty. Hey, Germany said, we need you. And so I answered the call. That's my homeland. That's where I'm from. So I answered the call. So I'm not trying to, that's why when it gets down to justification, everything, it gets murky and there's no need to go there because it's never justified. But you hear these times, again, even in life and death situations where people don't have an animus towards the other person. They don't have a hatred. They just say, and again, because you don't need that in order to do your job. You don't need that in order to function. You don't need that to protect yourself or to be violent in a, I want to say in a heroic way, but again, when you think about a battlefield or you think about an athletic competition or anything like that, depending on what the circumstances, violence may be on the menu. And you don't need to hate somebody in order to be violent, in order to do your job, whatever that job happens to be. So again, you're not missing out on anything by resisting hatred, but what you are avoiding is that disalignment, taking yourself out of a right alignment with who you are meant to be and how you're supposed to function, how we should function, and how we should see each other in a healthy way. And when it manifests, that's when you see how ugly it is. And that was what was more disturbing to me than anything else. And that was something that it just really, and at first I was one of those people saying, or thinking this is a mask off moment for a lot of folks. But it's not necessarily that, because when people say, well, I follow this person and they're so nice to these people and they stood up for this community and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, anybody can be very, very nice and seem very benevolent when they're doing what they want to do, when they're comfortable, when everything is going right, and when it's something that they personally believe in. It's very nice. It says there's a scripture that says, it's no benefit to love those who love you. Everybody does that. Like wicked people do that. Like it's not a problem. It's not a difficulty to love people who love you and to, root for people who share all your views and all your perspectives. It's very difficult to love somebody who is opposing you, who is diametrically opposed to everything that you believe in. It's very difficult to love that person. And just by loving that person doesn't mean that you don't oppose them. It doesn't mean you don't fight them. It doesn't mean that you don't, do what's necessary, whatever the circumstances, but it does mean that you are not doing it with hatred towards that person. And again, I think one of the displays of one of the proof in the pudding type situations is if you gloat or you glory in the demise of another human being, or you bemoan the fact that somebody's life was not ended. And as I alluded to earlier, there's a there's a blindness that comes with hatred, that comes with pride. And it makes you oblivious to the consequences, the greater consequence to, and that's kind of where I derailed myself initially, to society as a whole. Why killing people is not a healthy thing to do in general, because, and not only for the people directly involved, but to society at large, how people feel. I remember there was a pair of snipers. This is back, I can't remember how long ago now, but it was shortly after 9/11 or within a year or two, I believe. And it was, I believe one of the guys' names began with an M, but anyways, an older guy and a younger guy, and they would drive around, and I think it was in a Capri, I can't remember the vehicle, a Crown Vic or something. And they would snipe people. And I think they killed like 4 people. And one of them was at a gas station that is the exit that I used to take to get to my house. So you come off the highway off 95 North or South, whatever it is, came off 95, and there was an Exxon station there. And as I recall, that is where one of the attacks / murders took place. And obviously, again, the idea is terror, to inflict terror on people. And you had to make a decision. A lot of people were trying to make a decision, okay, do I not leave my house? I was like, look, you got to keep living your life. You can't give in to fear, and it's not going to do any good to walk around and creep around. If you are in the sight of the scope, more than likely they're seeing you, you're not seeing them. And, for me, it was just made my peace with, okay, I'll be walking. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh, there's Jesus. What's going on? What happened? Obviously it may not be that clean, but it's like you need to decide how you're going to live your life, but never felt, a hatred towards those people. But I mean, the point with that being that when that was happening, there was a terror, there was a general feel of trepidation and anxiousness and anxiety in society at large, not even the people who were impacted by it, but just the idea that there was somebody out there indiscriminately targeting people, meaning anybody could be targeted at any given moment. It put a fear in society, and that is detrimental to society as a whole. It bursts all kinds of secondary issues, people acting out in certain ways, acting out of fear. Again, these are not wholesome things we're talking about here. You take action out of fear, you live your life based in fear, you are going to hurt other people by default. Fear is a crippling disease, and a lot of times it's not even rational. So it causes a lot of problems. So just having something like that take place is going to set the tone. To have it happen in a very public area like that, in a public arena, happen to someone who should be, in people's minds, whether it's true or not, immune to such a thing. There should be enough security. There should be enough things to protect this person. If this person could not be protected from an assault, from something like that, then there's no way in heck that I'm protected. The best security, the best whatever that man can contrive is not enough to keep this person safe. What is it? I'm done for. Like, I can't, there's not a time where I can be like, oh, I'll go to the authorities. They'll help me, or I'll go to this person. They'll help me. Nope. Like, we know for a fact that nothing can happen. So you have a distrust. And I'm not saying we should be putting our security or our faith in bodyguards or in security details or anything. Obviously there's a wisdom in having those, but as we saw, a lot of times they can be grossly inadequate. I mean, however you want to look at the situation of the person, I think there's more than enough stuff to say whether it was intentional or not. There was a gross lack of efficacy in that situation. So putting your trust in that is a fallacy anyway. But the ripple effect that something like that could happen, just to a public figure, let alone somebody who is, in this particular instance, vying for the biggest leadership role in the United States of America, to have that happen to them and what that could do, what that could incite, what that could cause. It is you have to have a very narrow and very blinded view to think that is a good thing, to think that, because, and again, if you don't hate somebody, you can look at that and go, you know what, I don't want this person to, be in a position of leadership or authority. What ways can we do to have that not happen, where we still have a functioning society, where things are still going well? How do we operate within a system, even if that system is corrupt? Like, what can we do? Everything up to and including prayer, all the way down to, public service announcements or whatever, not like this, but just, what ways could we educate people, to share facts and show people, hey, this is what's going on, to, hit the streets with a microphone and let people know, hey, these are these are the things that you'd be voting for if you vote for this. Like anything other than let's just eliminate this person in a way that is going to create chaos, distrust, and fracture a country possibly irreparably. But when you have hatred, all you see is, I want that person gone. And that's why, and again, I know I've put a lot of this in here. I understand a lot of people that would watch this aren't necessarily religious, so I'm not trying to harp on that. I'm touching on principles, though, that I think that can be applied even if you don't believe in a particular faith. But there is a scripture that says, if a man hates his brother, he has committed murder. If he lusts, he has committed adultery. And that's because of the condition of the person's heart. It has nothing to do with the actual consequence. It's not saying that if you hate somebody, you should be tried as a murderer. It's saying that the condition of your heart, that when we talk about that blotch of cancer, that is there. The same blotch, the same taint is on that person if they hate somebody as it is if they actually killed them. The condition of the heart is exactly the same. The same impetus, the same motivation that would drive somebody to kill someone is going to be the same. It looks the same as a hatred for that person. And I think this has actually demonstrated that if you're ever curious or going, well, is that really true? Look at the reaction of a lot of people. You can see the hatred. You can actually, it has manifested in a lot of people, and you can actually see it for yourself and go, wow, like this person was chomping at the bit for there to be a death, for somebody's life to be taken. They were, when it talks about wicked people, it's like the thirst for blood, a desire for innocent blood. They want to see this happen to this person or to a group of people or whatever it is. There's an active desire to see a lust for blood. And so again, we're talking about the condition of the heart, not the consequences or the physical manifestation of it. It's the exact same thing. And you see that. And that's why so many people are recoiling from the expressions that a lot of people have when they say, oh, I wish this had actually happened, or why didn't you do better? It's an inhuman perspective, just as inhuman as taking another human being's life for no reason. And again, we talk about justification. This is something that I want to get into in a later podcast, which is the fallacy of, if you do this, then you're no better than they are. Well, that's a great rule made up by wicked people because they don't want to have the same thing done to them. The only way that actually works is if you do that thing for the reason that it was done. From a legal perspective, and that's really getting into the weeds, but from a legal perspective, by virtue, the law has to be what it is for a multitude of reasons. It's very limited in its scope and handicapped because of that. But setting aside legality, when you talk about the condition of the person, if you're saying you as a human being are no better than that person, you can say in the eyes of the law, you're no better than that but even then the law has manslaughter, has first degree murder, second degree murder, involuntary manslaughter. Like there's a bunch of categories just for taking a life that categorize it in a way that goes, in terms of severity and in terms of malice and all those kinds of things. But again, you want to set the law aside because in the law you say, well, there's a body on the ground, somebody is a killer, and it's just a level of degrees. But in terms of as a person, if you want to say that person is no better than somebody who does this, you're not just looking at the manifestation of it, the consequence of that. You're looking at why it was done. You're looking at the actual intention. If you're trying to determine whether or not that person is truly better than that other person. Somebody who, for a quick example, somebody who hunts animals for sport, who just enjoys watching a living creature run around and trying to take its life. At the end of the day, they may have a dead deer. Somebody who hunts to survive because they're starving or because they don't have any other meat on the table. They've got some food, but not a whole lot. And they're just going, I need to feed my family. And they're hunting for survival. In both cases, there's a dead deer, but the reason the deer is dead is very, very different. And to say that they're exactly the same because there's a dead deer is to disregard, I think, a huge, huge discrepancy between the two. So this conflation of if you're no better than that person if you do this, if you do the exact same thing, it's, well, why are you doing it? If you kill somebody out of hatred, that's very different than somebody killing out of self-defense. And so what we're talking about, what we experienced here was not self-defense. It was not anything in direct response to an immediate threat. There's the perceived threat. There's the hyperbole of threat that the media puts out. And I'm trying not to skew it too much, but my bottom line is I don't think there is a I'm just going to say in general, I haven't really looked into it, but I would say despite what I've heard about different presidencies and different presidents, I would say that there is never a time where the attempted, whether it was attempted or not, that an assassination of a public figure is warranted or is justified, is healthy, was good for society. And even if it was, the response to it would not be jubilation and dancing in the streets, because even people who take lives out of necessity, out of self-defense, they're not proud of it. They're not happy about it. They don't gloat. Most people, doesn't mean everybody, but most people don't gloat over that. They're like, I did what I needed to do. Like, I'm glad that I'm safe. I'm glad that whoever I was trying to protect is safe. I'm glad I did my job, if that was in the thing. But they don't celebrate. They're not like, yeah, I got to kill somebody. Like, that is not a healthy way of living your life. And so, again, getting to that fine point, I've kind of beat it around a little bit here, trying to land the plane. What we have seen recently is a manifestation of hatred. And it's been ugly. And I was happy to see there's been a lot of unanimous condemnation of that. Even people that say, look, I don't like the guy. I'm not going to vote for him. I don't care how many publicity photos there are, whatever of him. I don't like the guy. I don't think he's good for the country. But this was a horrible, horrible act. You know, this was something that should never have happened. This is a black eye on the country. It's a scathing indictment of where we're at in general. And it's just not good all around. Having absolutely no love whatsoever or appreciation or respect for the target, you can say all of that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Not only there's nothing wrong with it, that's actually good. And we're seeing more of that. People just saying, I don't know why people feel the need to clarify that they don't like the person, other than to say you can dislike this person and not want them to be in office and not agree with what they say or a lot of what they do, but still not be happy about this situation and not want this to be the way it happens. I want to vote and have it come down to that and say, hey, if most people want this guy in, well, we'll see what happens. And, whatever, which is what a lot of us have had to do, whether you're in 2016 or 2020, a lot of us had to just say, okay, well, if we'll just take it for granted, or we'll just assume this is what the general population wanted, and we'll just see if, how well it goes for us all. We're kind of in the same boat. So it's been good to see that, but I think it's an opportunity. So if you're one of those people who has had a quote unquote mask off moment to yourself, where you did not realize how much you hated this person, that you actually had that hatred. And I guess that was the point that I was making. It definitely got lost. Is I think that is one of the easiest ways. If you're going, do I hate this? Because I've used that word a lot in terms, and just usually very flippantly, very casually. For those who don't know, there's a collectible card game, digital collectible card game called Elder Scrolls Legends that I play, and there is a type of deck that is invasion. That's a mechanic of it, and I'll say I hate invasion. I hate it, and I shake my fist at anybody who plays it. But I know for a fact that if somebody said, oh, hey, did you hear in the news, there was this guy, he ran invade decks and he BM'd, which is bad manners, which is like taunting and being a jerk. And he would rope people if he was losing and, disconnect so that you had to, wait 5 minutes to get through the game. And he wasn't even there, like did all this horrible stuff. Did you hear he got killed? I would not be like, well, yeah, he had it coming. He played invade, or yeah, well, he had bad manners. It'd be like, are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Like, I'm not, there's a difference between like, oh, I'm mourning the loss of somebody and going, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. That's not what I'm saying either. But there's a huge difference between going, wow, okay, that's horrible. Like that person, was taken out of this life. That's kind of surreal, between that and going, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Oh, the humanity. And going, awesome. Well, he had it coming. That's karma. Like that's a very flippant comment that a lot of people, well, that's karma. Well, they had it coming. Never want to get to that point. You trust me. And I'm not saying from my personal experience, but the idea of we get what we deserve. There's actually a song called from the Newsboys, and the song is, when we get what we don't deserve, it's a real good thing. Because when you really think about it, and some people may say, you know what, I've lived an awesome life. I've never done anything bad to anybody with bad intentions or anything. So, I feel like if I got what I deserved, I'd be a millionaire and everything would be awesome in my life. But most of us, if we're being honest with ourselves, can look and go, if I got what I should get, if the things that, if the consequences of what I was doing were actually visited upon me. I mean, think about how many times have you driven maybe with a buzz or just impaired in some way. You weren't looking at the road for a period of time or whatever. The consequences of that can be drastic injuries and death. If we got what we deserved, if every time we made a bad choice, we got the maximum penalty for it, we'd be totally screwed. So the idea of oh, well, that's karma, you're kind of incurring, and I'm not saying this in a spiritual sense or a direct consequential sense. That doesn't even make sense. But not in terms of it like, oh, well, if you do this, this is going to happen to you. But calling for, championing karma. It's like a lot of people I think that do that tend to be the people who are most likely to get bitten in the butt by it at some point, but they're not going to realize that it's karma. I mean, I don't necessarily subscribe to karma. I think it's a little too smart, a little too insightful. If it's going to be effective, karma can't just go, well, this person gave money, so therefore I'm going to give them good things. Well, why did they give money? Was it selfish? Was it because they were getting something out of it? Was it a bribe? Karma has to have a little more understanding that a non-sentient thing should have, as a cause and effect. It has to really be able to discern minds and motives in order to actually be effective and truly deliver on its promise of justice or what have you. So I'm not, and that's a whole other topic. So I'm not, it's just the idea of people getting what they deserve. It's something that should not be invoked, I think, by most of us. I would never do that personally. I'm like, I am glad I don't get necessarily what I deserve. And I would hope that same grace would be extended to other people as well. But my point in all of this is it can be hard to really discern. And that's why I was talking about that. So I can safely say, even though I will express animus or, exaggerated, anger or whatever towards Invade or towards people who play that or towards people who have bad manners or who rope or who do all these things in the game. It is not to the extent where I see red when I think about them or where I froth at the mouth or where I would be jubilant at their demise. And so I think that is one way. It's a horrible way, but it's one way to gauge and really understand, okay, do I actually feel hatred towards this person or towards this thing, or do I not? And as I mentioned now twice, there was a situation where it was revealed that even though I never used profanity, even though I never, went on a tirade about it, that there had been this building and compounding hatred towards this way of thinking about things. And when it manifested, it showed itself to be hatred in all of its ugliness, and it needed to be addressed. But so fortunately, I didn't need to have it manifest based on some tragedy. But in this particular case, this tragedy has exposed to a lot of people and to their friends and family the amount of hatred they harbor for somebody. And again, regardless of how you want to slice it, there is no justification. You are never a healthier person. You are never better as a human being harboring hatred for anyone or anything than you are in letting it go. There's a quote that I love to death because I think it's just incredibly accurate and it hits the nail on the head, but it's about unforgiveness. And it is like living in unforgiveness, not forgiving somebody is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. You are not hurting somebody by hating them. You're not hurting somebody by withholding forgiveness from them. You are hurting yourself. You are destroying yourself. While in your mind, you're thinking, oh, this is good. It's good for me to hold on to this hatred, hold on to this unforgiveness. I'm not going to let them get away with this. I'm never going to forgive them. I'm going to hold this against them. And I'm going to think that they're a horrible person and just hope to goodness that they just get the worst ever. I'm trying to avoid certain language that would flag censorship or whatever. I don't know. I may have flagged it a bunch of times already. I'm not really sure what it's definitely, we're definitely not free to speak every word, even if it's not necessarily inherently detrimental or inflammatory, but whatever. That's part of what my awkwardness is. If you've noticed any kind of awkwardness, this particular topic, at different points, I'm like, well, if I can't say this word, then I can't say this word. The English language is going to break down if I keep skirting around certain things. At the same time, I am trying to phrase things as best as I can to be as innocuous as possible for the sake of something more easily digested in this particular situation. Hopefully in the future, won't have to do that. But, anyway, the idea that harboring hatred or unforgiveness is somehow hurting that person is a fallacy. You're hurting yourself. You're destroying yourself. You're allowing this cancer to spread to different parts of your body. You're keeping yourself out of alignment with truth, or in this particular case, out of alignment with a healthy way of being. You have embraced that, you have aligned yourself with it, and so you will always be skewed towards villainy, towards wickedness, towards evil, because that is the direction. You're going away from rightness, from being in a good place. And so it just really comes down to when you are confronted with that ugliness inside, when you're confronted with the understanding that you harbor hatred, you have a choice. Course correct. Say, nope, I'm realigning myself. This is not okay. I need to do some introspection. And again, however people want to deal with it or are capable of dealing with it, it needs to be done. Get that hatred out of there. Make that distinction where your reflex is not to, it's, when people talk about fight or flight, when they talk about, why did you do this? Why was your instinct to try to protect somebody? It happened without me thinking about it. You want your instinct to be one of compassion. You want your instinct to be one of, okay, you want there to be self-control. You want there to be a measured response, not maniacal, jovial celebration, not some kind of outrageous mourning or bemoaning that somebody's life was not snuffed out. Like you don't want that to be a reaction. If it's your reaction, there is a deep-seated issue, and it doesn't make you a bad person. I've been grappling with that as well as part of this. I see, it's like, oh, this streamer, this person, happily, none of these people are anybody that I follow, thankfully. But if it was, you go, okay, again, going back to that thing, all of sin, all of us have screwed up. It's not something that I hold against them. However, I am not particularly keen on hanging out with somebody who thinks they are justified in harboring hatred for somebody. Because again, who knows how long it'll be before they harbor it against me? How far do they have to drive with their alignment skewed before it gets aimed in my direction? And do I really want to hang out with somebody? So it's one thing to have that reaction and go, oh, that ain't right. Oh gosh, that's not good. Like I've let this go too far. I've embraced this too much. I need to back off. I need to stop listening to this kind of stuff, to these sources that are poisoning my mind. Whatever it takes, whatever it is for yourself to get yourself to a place where if you were to hear this news again, your reaction would not be one of either jubilation at a success or the bemoaning, the genuine heartfelt anguish that a life was not taken, that innocent blood was not shed that day. You want to be in a place where that is not your inherent and initial reaction. You want to be in a place where you're not embracing hatred. And that's all I'm saying. And again, I guess that was the final part of the puzzle was how do you react? What's a healthy way to react? I personally, and I've said this in the comment section in a few different places, some people are like, it's a shame that, people are allowed to say this on public platforms. I say, no, that is I want to know. And I think in general, people need to see how bad it has gotten for some of these folks. When you see this person post this post and you think, oh, it's relatively innocuous. Well, you pair that with the hatred that you now know that they have in their life and you go, oh, maybe this is actually kind of a indication that this person is becoming slightly unhinged. This person is becoming slightly unstable, or maybe this is indicative that this hatred for this person is actually now already amasticized. I don't know if that's the right word. I wanted to use it a lot, but I didn't look it up beforehand. I think that means to grow or to spread, or to get bigger, but I don't know for a fact. But it's kind of a cool word, amasticized. It might even be pronouncing it incorrectly. Oh well, maybe I've embarrassed myself. I don't care. I'm gonna land this plane, dog on it. Thank you for sticking with me. If you've already gone this long, like I said, it was a bit rambling. I really hadn't thought about it a whole lot. I mean, I've given it some thought, but I wanted it to be cohesive, but I didn't really think about this follows this follows this. So if you've gotten this far, I definitely appreciate your time. But yeah, just right now that's something that I have not really processed too much, which is, my instinct is to say, okay, we're done. There is nobody that I would, and to be fair, at this point, I don't have any friends, anybody that I'm close to that I know of anyway, who is fostering, who has aligned themselves with hatred. I've encountered people who have had moments where they go, rah, 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 and they go, you know what? I need to step back. I just need to, separate myself from this, which is fine. Like I said, I think it can be very natural for hatred to rise up, for there to be that temptation to embrace hatred and to feel justified. Again, pride is a heady drug. Pride and self-righteousness, offense, taking offense, all those things, you get an endorphin rush from those things. I don't know if it's clinical or not, but I tried it once. I tried getting offended at something and it felt great because I was automatically, just by virtue of deciding to be offended, I was elevated over that person. I suddenly had moral superiority to them. They owed me an apology. They owed the world an apology as far as I was concerned. And it's a very heady feeling, but it's not right. It's not actually, that's not how that works. I am not morally superior. I am not better than them. I have simply placed myself over them because it feels good to do so. And so it's the same thing here. Okay, am I going to decry this person? Am I going to feel superior to them by saying no? But there's a difference between saying, you know what, I'm distancing myself from this because this is not the kind of person I want to be around, and condemning it and saying, oh, they shouldn't. And I understand that you can make an argument for, well, this is hate speech, or this is, and honestly, if the person has shown themselves to be hateful, that would literally be hate speech. It's speech coming from a hateful person about the very person or ideology or thought process that they have their focused animus towards. But even so, I would prefer people to feel free to speak their mind. One, for their own benefit, because if they have any kind of self-awareness and any kind of desire to better themselves, they can look at that a week removed, or if there is a slap on the wrist of some kind, they look at it and go, wait, okay, was I really out of line here? There's that meme. Am I out of, is it just me, or, am I the one wrong? It's like, no, everyone else is wrong. To have that, at least that moment of introspection, of self-reflection. And even if it gets discarded, at least it happened. So I think it could be very good for them to have that kept in front of their face so that they can look at it and they can see comments. And of course, if you're hyped up about it, if you got all this emotion going, chances are you're not going to be thinking rationally anyway. So minimal positive outcome there. But it also allows other people to see that person for who they are. And I'm not even getting into whether it means jobs or whatever. I mean, I'm strongly against what is considered to be cancel culture. If you do something or say something that causes you to be deficient at your job or hurts your productivity or your professionalism or your ability to do your job, then it's just called getting fired. It's called losing your job because you are not good at your job. You have done things that are detrimental to the job or to the company, directly detrimental. Not, oh, well, you have an opinion that we don't particularly align ourselves with. And so if people look in your social media and everything, that your opinion is your own. You're a human being outside of work. What you do outside of work should not be something that is factored into job. I genuinely believe, even if I don't agree with you, even if I don't like what you're doing, if it is not part of your job, if it's not something you carry into work with you, I personally don't think people should be losing their jobs over it. Whether that's something they say or something they do, unless obviously it's legal, in which case, you'd get fired anyway. But we've always had fireable offenses. People have always lost their jobs for failing to perform or for making wrong decisions or what have you. But there's been an unhealthy mingling of personal life and professional life, and this company, this fad of companies dictating morality and dictating what they consider to be right and wrong, and imposing that on people's private lives in ways that have really no impact or weight on their actual job. That's where quote unquote cancel culture comes in, and it's not right for any reason. So somebody being ugly about this situation, somebody showing their hatred, if it doesn't affect their job performance, if they're still able to do their job. Now it gets dicey, obviously, if they're in the public eye. And so, it's like, well, we don't want to represent them anymore because they have made, they are inextricably tied to their image and what they say and what they do. And therefore we cannot continue to support them because they've now ostracized a good portion of their audience. There's a lot of gray areas and a lot of things where you go, but in general, somebody bagging groceries or somebody working in a warehouse, if they have an opinion and it reveals how hateful they are as a person, those should be coming for their jobs, unless they jump on a box in the warehouse and start trying to convince other employees or start spreading that around. If they keep it outside of their work, let them keep working. Because it'll bite you in the butt otherwise. That's the problem. The standard has to be applied to everybody. And so even though personally, like I said, I think hatred is a horrible thing. It's unhealthy and it's something that should be shunned. I don't necessarily think somebody should lose their livelihood because they've shown that there's an area of their life where they harbor hatred. Because who knows how many people also harbor that, but because it doesn't get pushed, it doesn't get inflamed, it doesn't manifest, nobody really sees it. Nobody really knows about it. And there are some who mask it. I just think that it was a good time to remind, or to express, or to just put out there, just for your mind to chomp on, the idea that hatred is never justified. It's never healthy. It's never going to benefit you. You don't lose anything by releasing yourself from hatred. And on the other hand, it can blind you. It is paired with, his best buddy is pride and or self-righteousness, again, because those feed off of, or those enable the hatred. You can't hate somebody who you think is equal to you. You must be morally superior or superior to that person in some way in order to hate them, because otherwise you're hating somebody who you yourself could be hateful. You have to have those things working in conjunction. And pride, there is never a time where assuming your opponent is inferior to you is ever a good idea. It's better to go in and think, hey, I got a big fight on my hands, but I know that I'm capable. I can put up a good fight here. It's better to go in with that mentality than to say, oh, I'm just going to kick this person's butt. It doesn't usually work out going in there. Confidence and pride are very different things, but pride is blind. Pride typically does not lead to making great decisions. A lot of times decisions will be made to bolster pride. Pride decides it is cannibalistic in nature, in terms of it feeds itself. Cut off your nose to spite your face. Pride demands that it is satisfied. And if that comes to the detriment of strategy or propriety or decency, so be it. Pride needs to be fulfilled. So you've got pride that is blind and foolish, self-righteousness that is just like a very gross, particularly gross strain of pride. That is automatically paired with hatred, which is itself detestable and despicable and incredibly self-harmful, detrimental to yourself, and is also blind. It has, again, it's a laser focus, or focused animus is how I have described it. And so you pair all that together and you're just a blind walking person. I'm out of gas here, folks. So anyway, like I said, thank you so much for listening. I apologize for a bit of the rambling at the end. I was just trying to make sure that I conveyed everything. But yeah, and so right now, like I said, my challenge is, fortunately, I don't have to apply it to myself directly, but in principle, we want to think, okay, when somebody has a revelation, when they have a manifestation of hatred, do you distance yourself as a person? I kind of touched on, briefly a little bit of my personal views in terms of professionalism, whether somebody should be allowed to talk. I always want to know what my enemy is thinking. And if you think you have no enemies, that's not wisdom. That's unwise to think that there is no one aligned against you. Even if it's not against you personally, there are people who are aligned against your values, your beliefs. And to think that you can go through life without encountering an enemy is foolishness or wishful thinking. I want to know what people think. I want to know what their general reactions to their genuine reactions are to things, because I want to identify who they are and what's going on with them. I don't want them to be able to conceal themselves. And that's where I jumped off on the tangent that most people, when it comes to this particular gentleman, most folks are not in any way candid or discreet about their animus towards him, whether it is their just disgust of him in general, a distaste for his policies, or whether it's actually that hatred that manifested around this event. But on a personal level, how do you deal with somebody who is unrepentant? And people say, I'm sorry. And that's, I guess that's the other half of it. There is, not the other half of it, but this is something I do think that should be addressed as well. There is, a lot of people are hearing, some people have come out and said something, and people have rebuked them for it. And then that person has apologized, said, you know what, I crossed the line, I'm sorry. And if you think about it, what more can you do? If you, I was fortunate that when mine manifested, when I realized that I had a hatred towards something, it was in a room with just me and that other person. Nobody else saw it. And, we talked about it with HR, but nothing, went beyond that. But for somebody who is on a social media platform, or somebody who is a personality, when they say something like that, and that is their reflex, could very well be the first time that they are confronted with the fact that they have hate, that they have fostered hate, allowed it to fester in their lives. And so what else can you do but genuinely go, that was out of line. Like, I am so sorry. Like, I didn't even realize it. Like, I always knew I didn't like the guy. I always knew whatever, but I never thought that I would actually have this reaction, that it had gone that far. So I am sorry. I am very sorry that I behaved in this way, that I made that comment. It was inappropriate. And I'm appalled because it's almost like me looking in on myself. Like, I feel like that wasn't even coming out of me, but clearly it was. And I've got some self-reflection to do. I've got some things I need to work out. What more can you do than that? And it may not, because you're caught up in the moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that when people say these things that they think that everybody agrees with them. It could just be, this is a genuine reaction. And unless they're thinking about it, unless they're they're just naturally always self-reflecting. They're always thinking about stuff, and they got the time. And if they went on to do something else, it may not be until those comments start coming in that it kind of is a slap in the face. And like, oh, wow, yeah, I never really thought about it. Like, ooh, gosh, oh, geez, I can't believe I said that. Okay, yeah, that really, no, yeah. And it just takes a moment. All it takes sometimes is that little jarring of somebody, hey, dude, what's your problem? What do you mean, what's my problem? You just said this. I did. Oh, screw me, I did. I just said that. I really said that. Oh, man, that is. So I do think there needs to be some grace for a lot of these people who have had again, it's not a mask off moment. It has been a manifestation of a hatred that they have allowed to fester in their hearts. And I would say most people don't want that, or would never, or are ashamed of to find that about themselves. As much as they don't like whoever or whatever, again, same with me. As much as I dislike the ideology and that mindset, that philosophy, as much as I despise it, I don't want to hate it. I don't want to have it manifest like that again in my life. And so I think there needs to be a grace. And there are plenty of people that aren't changing their tune. They're doubling down. They've gotten, they're going to justify themselves and they're going to hold that anger to them, the hatred to them, and they're going to say that they're justified in doing it and whatever. And those are the people that I would say I unequivocally would distance myself from. Happily, as I said, none of my friends, nobody that I follow, nobody that I've ever quote unquote looked up to or thought, hey, this is a great person. None of those people so far have had that take. I haven't had to say, okay, I'm unsubscribing, or I'm not following, or I'm distancing myself. Happily I'm not in that situation, but if you are, consider heartfelt apologies. And this is something that I had to come to grips with pretty much in the past hour as I'm talking about this, because my mindset was, hey, once people reveal who they are, get away from them. But there is that understanding that it could be news to them as well. It could be something that they're realizing for the first time as well. And if they back down from it, it could be, oh, well, they got caught, that people were saying things, but it could very well be for a lot of these folks, it's their first time coming to grips with the fact that they've let this go too far. And it may not change how they feel about Trump or whatever else, but if it at least gets to the point where I should not be angry that somebody was not publicly murdered. I shouldn't be happy if somebody, I don't want to be happy. I don't want to delight in, I don't want there to be joy in my life and in my heart because of someone else's demise. As I said, you can be relieved, in certain circumstances. You can be thankful. But it should be a very subdued thing. It should be a very somber thing. And I mean, you can be thrilled that you're alive. I'm just thinking about people like when World War II ended, when Hitler, fell. I still don't think, again, I don't think there should have been hatred for him, but it should have been okay, now this whole campaign is over. We don't have to worry about our lives. We don't have to worry about more deaths and more violence. We don't have to worry about more aggression. All of this, everything that was surrounding this person and all the evil and wickedness he was doing, that is all gone. And I'm not going to mourn his passing, but it's not something that I'm like, yeah. So yeah, just think about that as well. So if you had a oh my gosh moment, process it and figure out a way to get rid of that hatred. Don't try to justify embracing it. It will not do you any good. And if you have a friend, family, somebody who has had that moment and they have recanted it very quickly or backtracked from it, don't necessarily look at it as a disingenuous, like, oh, they're just doing that to save face or whatever. it very well could be a genuine a moment where they just are appalled at what they've allowed to fester in their lives. And, maybe be guarded, maybe understand, and maybe be looking for it. And honestly, have a discussion, folks. You can have a discussion with people. Again, if you have that relationship with that person in your life, say, hey, look, again, I'm not saying to agree with the person, but get this hatred out of your life. That's something that I would say to somebody that I loved and cared about. Whether I agreed with them or not. We could both dislike or disagree with the same person, but if I find out my friend is actually, giddy about the idea of that person not being alive anymore, I would say, hey, let's back that down. That's probably something that should be looked at, because it's not a healthy way to live your life. And again, it's a big deal. What we align ourselves with determines a lot of the trajectory of our lives, almost literally, because it is skewing us towards destruction, towards really bad things. And so we always want to make sure we're still aligned facing north. We're aligned with the truth. Anything that derails us from that, repent of it, which repent just means to turn around, turn away from it. So you say, okay, I told a lie. It's not okay for me to lie. It's not okay. It's not okay for me to impugn my own integrity like that. I'm setting the course right. We're back this way. My default now is to tell the truth. I may still stray. I may still kind of veer off, but if I take my hands off the wheel, my natural inclination, my natural impulse is to tell the truth. And same thing here. My natural impulse is to have a healthy understanding, aversion to a healthy shunning of wickedness, but not a hatred towards it, because it doesn't behoove me to hate wickedness. That's just going to spread to other areas. And so now I'm not only just hating wickedness, now I'm hating wickedness adjacent things. And then it becomes things that aren't even really wickedness adjacent. They just are things that I don't agree with. And it just goes on from there until you become very, instead of it being a selective hatred like cancer, it is now all over. It's all the vital organs, your brain, everything, your heart has all been corrupted. And there are very few things that you in fact don't hate. And it just gets worse from there. So anyway, again, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully, I don't know if this will be inspiring, but just something to think about, something to wrap your brain around. And until next time, man, I really need to learn how to land the plane, don't I? This is ridiculous. Take care.